What's up, quarantined people, sheltered in place? Yes, I am in the same boat as well. I'm trying to stay creative and be creative. So welcome to my YouTube channel and the first video of hopefully many that I get to do in these next couple months. I'm creating TikToks and all these Instagram stories you've probably seen. I've been getting a lot of questions about how I create these videos, and obviously the concepts come from other inspiration, but I'm gonna kind of show you how I create the videos themselves. So I thought it'd be easier to just create a tutorial and kind of take you step by step through what I do. Let's go. Alright guys, so let's jump into actual content. So here you can see I have some assets already laid out for this tutorial. So we got some horizontal video as one example that we're going to go through, which is your usual 16:9 footage. Vertical video is the second example we're going to work with, is typically the kind of content you're usually creating on your phone. Some of the stuff that you're capturing for TikTok, Instagram, Facebook even, will be the kind of small digestible content that usually you're capturing on your phone. Best way to get those pieces onto your computer, I usually use two ways, one of which is AirDrop, depending on how good my internet is. Usually sometimes it's kind of shoddy, so upload rate is kind of So if AirDrop doesn't usually work, I use a handy tool called Image Capture, which I have open right here. If you have your phone connected to it, it's great. I usually just grab whatever I need and import into the right folder that I usually have. For most of the time, usually GoPro footage, you get an SD card, so I usually use a SD with some kind of adapter. So I'll be running through a lot of the Adobe programs. That's what I use, that's what I'm comfortable with. Today I'll be using Premiere to kind of take you through how I edit using it. That's just my preference. There's a ton of other video editing softwares out there, and I'm sure a lot of the tools that I show you today you can translate into a new application, just about finding where the tool is in the new UI. So we're gonna launch Adobe Premiere. So then once it launches, it's gonna bring up this screen. The more you use it, it's gonna bring up recent projects that you've done. What you're gonna do here is just click New Project. Let's just call this Tutorial. I'm gonna create a new folder in where I'm creating all this and call it Premiere, and we'll save that there. I'm gonna hit click OK, and then that should launch the interface. Generally speaking, it probably won't launch like this. This is a preference that I have. So you can actually create your workspace exactly how you like. Usually when it launches, it'll launch all panels, which you can actually customize yourself. You can drag things out and pop things around and move things around as you please and as you wanna. As you start getting better with the program and as you start to use the tools, you can better customize your layout for yourself. For this instance, I'm going to use one that's a single screen that'll show what we need to show for this tutorial. So what's highlighted right now in blue is going to be your project window. So this is where all your assets will come in: audio, images, video footage, and everything else that you're going to be using to create on your timeline. This will have all your metadata for all the footage and stuff too, and then you can create tabs on the top that can take you through other aspects of it. Just such for example, what I have here are the effect controls. So when you have certain effects on a footage clip, it'll show what's there, essential graphics, what I'll get into later, and to be able to search the effects that you want to use between clips or on audio, such as that. Down here, we're next to the timeline. Once we create it, you'll start to see more detail. To the left of it is the toolbar, which we'll go through in a little bit. And then this is your program window. As you scrub through, when you start working, you'll be able to see a live update of what's going on your timeline there. So bring in some of that footage that I was showing you earlier. So if we navigate to where the footage is, if you just click on the folder itself and hit import, it'll bring in that folder with the actual naming convention. So as your projects start to get bigger, it's easier to keep track of what you have. So the better you are with your folder organization ahead of time, the easier it is in your project, because it brings it in exactly how you would save and create your file structure. So I'm gonna bring in the other footage as well. So just navigate back to it, get into the vertical footage, and there you go. So that's now has all the footage that I want to work with in this example, or whatever footage that you want to bring in. The best way, and I think this is going to keep everything kind of consistent for you, especially when you come to the end to create your project and share it, is bringing this video footage into a timeline. For example, I'll start with the vertical video first. That was just me dropping down the folder structure so I can keep things organized. I can collapse and decollapse the folders as I please. So if I have more than one clip and I want to keep things consistent, I think the best way, and you're more than welcome to find other alternatives to create your timeline, is if you drag this folder to where it says new sequence, and I'll show that in a second, it actually automatically creates its own timeline. So you see the sequence right there. It creates based on the naming structure too. So this is great. Everything is doing the work for itself. I don't need to backtrack and figure out naming conventions and things like that. So now I have the 3 clips on the timeline. So as you see, I grabbed the playhead, which is this blue thing across all these numbers, which is your time markers. So if you keep scrubbing, this will basically take you through the video footage that you just incorporated into your timeline. So right here, V1, that's your first layer. That'll show all your video, and A1, continuing downwards, is your first layer of audio. So to zoom in, I use a lot of key commands, so I'll go quick, and if you want me to, comment below. I'll put up my key commands, and I'll put up like this little doc that I have. It's pretty cool. It helps me out navigating through. So I want to increase this timeline so I can see the clips a little bigger. So I'm going to hit the dash keyboard, the dash key under the delete button, and it'll size out the timeline based on how big the aspect window is in your, like, so the bigger your screen is, the bigger your timeline is going to be. So it'll automatically know how far and how big to make your timeline. So that's pretty cool. Now I have a little better view and I can scrub through a little, quicker. Now you don't see it too much, but you can see the audio levels on my footage right there. So that was one of the ways to create a sequence, which is the best way. It's always tough to create a new sequence. You don't know what the metadata is sometimes for footage. You don't know what the aspect ratio they've shot with. So this way it gets everything that they've given you or you have taken. It'll take its natural data and create a sequence based off of that. So it's a great way to just keep everything all aligned. You don't have to guess and check and create frame rates and aspect ratios based off of something that you may not know. So you could do the same thing with the horizontal video or with any video, and there you go. It'll create the timeline for you. This one has better examples of audio. I just hit the dash keyboard key again, and it brings out this timeline and it zooms it in a little more. If I hit option and I'm using a mouse, and if I scroll up, it'll create the layer a little bigger so I can see the attributes a little more. So now when I scrub through, I can see the peaks of the audio and stuff like that as well. So also another way is if you don't want to bring everything into the timeline all raw and you want to kind of bring in what you're going to use so you can keep your timeline clean, which I highly recommend. It's always a great thing to do, is if you double click on the footage, it'll bring you into the source window. So source window is where you can scrub through the piece and create in and out markers. So you have the in and out markers here, which you can physically click, or you use the keyboard shortcuts I and O, and for I for in, O for out, obviously. And then you scrub through, pick the times that you want. Let's go into this vertical video timeline. I'm doing the same thing, zooming back out, or if you hit option and use your scroller on the mouse, that'll allow you to zoom in and out as well too. So I'll push this back. So I'll push this a little further into the timeline so I don't mess up that footage. But if I hold this footage and drag it down, it brings what I created, the markers, onto the timeline. So this way, it'll help you keep your timeline clean. Having a clean timeline will help you when you start to have bigger projects. For example, I have this project here that I've been working on. This is a work project. When you start to have timelines that are like this big and start to incorporate all sorts of other assets, it's very crucial to keep your workflow clean. And I feel like using the source window to create in and out markers to bring in footage like that is a great way to keep your timeline clean. But sometimes you don't have that ability. Sometimes you have to scrub through all the raw footage to find the points yourself. So it's a case-by-case use, definitely. So let's jump back into the tutorial. I'm going to close this out. We'll go back to the timeline. I use heavily the keyboard just because I like to maneuver throughout the timelines on all my programs using key commands. So it's just easier to move through. But I'm using the mouse to scrub through. If you just grab it and scrub through. All right. I think it's a good point to go over the tools that you would use to create a better timeline. So I don't use that many of the tools that often. The ones that I will go over are the ones that I do commonly use a lot. And first one is obviously the arrow tool. That's just to navigate your clips throughout the timeline and to move them about. I'm clicking this and you notice that both are highlighted. So when you bring in audio and video, it'll keep it together. So that's a great thing. So if you need to move things off and you have VO that's related to footage, it won't move things apart. You can always unlink it, but I don't recommend it until you know it's set in stone. Another tool that I often use is the cut tool, which is right here. It's to cut between clips that I already have on the timeline. So it creates a cut in between a clip that I already have. For instance, if I wanted to like either speed this up or slow this down, I have the ability to, you know, kind of take that and speed it up. So that's comes to another tool that I often use is the rate stretch tool, which is it gives you the ability to take that clip in a section that you have, and now if I take it from the right tail end and drag inward, that creates a faster version of that clip, so it speeds it up automatically. So it kind of already time remaps it and time ramps it up for me. It's same with the opposite. I just command Z to go back to normal. If I stretch it in the opposite direction, I'm slowing the footage down. So it's a great tool to have if you want to work fast without having to go in and go to your speed duration and going through all the numeric values of things. You can kind of eyeball it and go with the cut, because sometimes not everything is always driven with audio, so you can kind of play with the cut as you want. So there's various ways to do it. It's just what tool you're used to and what speed you're at, and obviously how much time you have for the cut too. So then as you start to get more advanced, you know, you're going to want to incorporate more things than just what you're allowed to incorporate through Premiere. And that's why I like using Adobe, because I often use After Effects a lot. You know, given being a motion designer, that's my nature and trade. So anything that I incorporate into Premiere, I'm always in After Effects using it, whether it's copy, titles, or anything like that. I just have a better comfort in After Effects because I'm faster in it and I have more control over what I want and where I want it placed. You know, obviously there's the type tool here. You can create and it'll take the type tool. You can create your type. I'm not too familiar with the type tool and the type in Premiere, but I often am using After Effects, and that would probably be a more appropriate tutorial for me to go over. I love creating, you know, graphic templates for Premiere for a lot of video editors, so I'm often doing that using Essential Graphics. As you can tell, here's a great example of a project that I've been working on for a client, that we created templates for video editors to create summaries, and we created titles. And so everything was created for the video editor to completely customize in Premiere, down to the background color, the logo color, the placement of the text. You know, it's very user friendly, especially in the Premiere end. So if we were to open up one of the projects here, you could see that everything is pretty much customizable in here, which is cool, especially if a video editor does not have the capability of opening up After Effects and exporting and rendering out all these templates and titles for, let's say, a series of 10 to 12 videos. That could take a lot of time. So this will speed up that workflow for the Premiere editor in that sense. And that's how I incorporate titles. I know it's a little more advanced than this video than I wanted to get, but I just didn't want it to seem like there's bare bone. But yeah, this is what the video would look like bare, and then treated after everything that I do. This is what a timeline would look like after it's been edited down and cut down and transitioned well and added graphics to and such like that. So as you start to get more advanced and you start to play around with the ability of this program, you can find yourself doing a lot more than just creating TikTok and Instagram videos. Exporting the video, which is often a common thing that people have issues with, which will bring up this window, the export window. The best way to kind of do this is, especially if you're not familiar with codecs and exporting, the best way to get the file that you would want to share to your family and friends or to your social media is navigate to H.264, and then if you click on where the blue text is for the file name, navigate to where you want to save. I'm not going to save this one, and then you hit Q or export depending on your machine. Best way to probably do it if you're a beginner is just hit export here and then go navigate to your Finder folder where you exported your video, and then you're good to go. And you should have an MP4 right there ready for you to share to the world. I know this was a kind of bear and drag tutorial. I promise I'll get better at these as I start to do more, but this was a kind of very quick and overview of Premiere, and I know I showed a little bit of After Effects and a little more advanced stuff, so feel free to comment. I would love to create another video that takes part 2 of this. So happy editing, and if you have any questions, reach out, man. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. I know this is the first one, but I'll be definitely having more. And with that, have a good day, guys. Quarantine safe, shelter in place. Peace out. Thanks. Let's jump in.
That was so good.